Hello, everybody, and good morning. I'm Dr. Deanna Minich, and welcome to the Metagenics Institute Live. We have our featured guest today, Dr. Ann Shippy. I'll just tell you a little bit about Dr. Shippy, and then I'd like for her to talk a little bit more about what she's going to talk about with us today. So Dr. Shippy is a physician. She's also been certified in functional medicine. And I would say that from what I know about her, and I know her a bit, not just professionally, but personally, she has a focus in environmental medicine, toxicity. When I think of Anne, I think of mycotoxins and mold and really going after those issues. And her practice is in Austin, Texas. And so before she went into medicine, she was an engineer. And what I really like about that is that she has a very root cause based way of thinking about working with a patient. So welcome, Anne. Welcome to our featured talk today on endocannabinoids and CBD.
Thanks for having me. And I'm excited to share some about how I think about environmental toxicity and where CBD can play a role with our patients.
Yeah, so let's get into the basics. So first, talk with us about what is CBD? What does that stand for? We hear a lot about this, and in some cases it feels like, is this something we should be exploring? Is it legal? Is it illegal? What about quality? Is this marijuana? Is it hemp derived? So walk us through some of the basics of what is CBD.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of confusion out there, especially as marijuana is being legalized in more states. Like, what's the difference between CBD and then versus the whole plant of marijuana? So it turns out that there's a lot of confusion. So the cannabinoid family of plants can be the marijuana plant or the hemp plant, and it's just determined by the amount of THC in it.
So okay, what is THC? Can you tell us what is THC?
The phytocannabinoids have over 80 components in the plants, and so this is like looking at a family tree for fruits or for grains and then just seeing what's the closest together, right? So now these plants are grouped by the amount of the CBD, which is not psychoactive, and the THC, which is psychoactive. So the hemp is less than 0.3% of THC. That's the definition. So if you hear hemp, that means that there's little to no psychoactive component of it. It is not going to have an impact on your kind of the psychiatric side of things, other than potentially decreasing depression and anxiety. But it's not going to change your psychomotor. It's not going to
no hallucinations, no. So we're pretty safe with hemp oil, right? And again, that's, you said 0.3% THC, which is not enough to have this psychoactive effect.
Or less, yes. So
or less, okay.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating is in 2018, the farm bill that was passed now allows the hemp plant to be legal in all, the growing it to be legal in all states, but the supplement side of things, it can still depend on which state you're living in as to whether that's legal. And we'll put some references that can help determine that if you weren't sure when you're watching it.
I'm so curious. So if it doesn't have the psychoactive effect, why would the hemp oil be illegal in certain states then? Do we know? I mean, I'm very naive about this whole area, so I'm asking questions that are.
I think it's just legislation catching up with.
But there's kind of this imprint or thought.
A lot of people still don't like. Sometimes when I recommend CBD for people, they're like, "You, Dr. Shippy, you want me?"
Right.
Because there's still just so much confusion. And a few months ago, I was at I'm an internist, and so I had gone to a traditional medicine meeting and about what the laws are in Texas. It was a pre-legislative meeting, and most of the doctors there were confused about what CBD is and if it was legal or not. So I pointed them to my blog that I talked about it. So I think it's the same thing. It's just getting people aware of the benefits of CBD and feeling comfortable that it's not going to alter them, and that it can actually really potentially help them.
And who can it help? When you start thinking of the different patients that come into your office and all the different supplements and, different therapeutic tools that you have in your toolkit, who are you mostly thinking of when it comes to CBD oil?
Well, when I started using CBD, I was just tiptoeing into it because I really, I had read about it, but I was still a little leery about how it could actually apply in my practice. So I just started really slow. And I really started with people that were having difficulty with sleep and high levels of inflammation that, were probably impacting their hormone regulating and their neurotransmitters. And also people that were having high anxiety. So what's fascinating to me is the number of patients that I see with mold exposure or other environmental exposure that have these symptoms, where one of the most significant things that they're concerned about is that they're not sleeping, they're not getting rested, and they feel so anxious. And just all the other pain syndromes and things that can happen when there's high inflammation in the body. So then just seeing, okay, well, when we start using, and I'm still very cautious. Because there's such a difference in the dose response curve. So I'll start out at very low doses and have them titrate up to see, what their effect is. So then seeing that the inflammation would start coming down as well when we were addressing it, using it for sleep or anxiety primarily. So then what's fascinating, and I'll put a link to this in the notes afterwards, it's a great review article, is really explaining how CBD has effects on reducing inflammation and also helping to modulate inflammation. So our intrinsic and endocannabinoid system is so powerful. And there are really two main parts of that. There's the part that really regulates our anxiety and sense of well-being. And then there's the immune system part of the innate endocannabinoid system. And so it totally makes sense that we can use when that gets disrupted with environmental exposures or nutritional deficiencies or other things, that giving the nudges with the phytocannabinoids from the CBD can really help to get the system to be able to perpetuate the healing process. So I know you wanted me to talk a little bit about my thought process. So it's a great tool to help people stay in it while we're really working on getting to the root cause of why they're having the symptoms that they're having. So I'm still doing all my other approaches with functional medicine and kind of having my chemical engineering brain look at the different systems and how they really go together. But a lot of times adding that CBD in can help them to bridge that gap, to start to feel better and to know, like, have faith in their body again, that they can get better.
So it sounds like it is helping people to transition better. It's helping them with symptoms. So the two things that I took away, at least from the clinical symptom side, would be sleep disturbances and mood disturbances. And so when I'm thinking about the mood disturbance side, do we know any of the effects? And pardon me just not knowing about the biochemistry of how the endocannabinoids interact with hormones and the endocrine axis. But when I think of toxins, I think of endocrine disruptors. And then when you talk about mood modulation, I start thinking, how is CBD changing hormone response? What is happening there? Is there any data, or do we know anything mechanistically about how CBD might be interacting or changing, whether it's sex hormones or thyroid hormone? Do we know any of that?
Well, what's fascinating is that part of the endocannabinoid system itself, I have a whole list, it influences pleasure and happiness, the ability to cope with stress, decreases anxiety, increases libido, and decreases pain and cortisol inflammation levels. So there's got to be a marriage between this endocannabinoid system and the other endocrine systems in the body. It's fascinating.
Yeah. It sounds like a wonder supplement. Like, who would not want to take, as you're describing it, I'm thinking, here we are, it's December. It is a very hectic time of year. Is this something that people can start taking and then immediately have the effects of? I mean, I started thinking of like theanine from green tea and kind of like that sense of rest wakeful alertness. So how soon do we start to see these mood effects of CBD?
Right away. Yeah.
Right away.
Notice the difference the very next day. And then I'm leading out a whole nother important aspect of what CBD does. So, or the endogenous endocannabinoids. So it's an immune regulator. So it can help to make your immune system respond more appropriately and decrease inflammation. It's also neuroprotective. And so that's why we're seeing a lot of research being done on neurological diseases like MS. There's many studies out on MS and CBD, and then also suppressing seizures. There's, that's a lot of where the research has gone to. It also has an effect between the gut flora and brain communication. So it's part of how, we have this big gut brain connection that we see every day. Well, this endocannabinoid system is part of what's sending the chemical messengers between our brain and our gut. And then it also helps to regulate our vascular system. So it's really a powerful substance. And I think that's because it affects so many different aspects of our physiology. I think that's why people, once they start taking it, they do have a sense like, okay, I don't need to be afraid of this, and it could be really helping me. And then sometimes I have people where they take it for a little period of time, and then they feel like their bodies are back in balance. We've done all our, the other things we're doing in the practice by getting their microbiome back into balance and healing their gut and helping them to detoxify the environmental toxins. And they're like, oh, okay, I don't need it anymore because my own endocannabinoid system is working better.
That's fabulous. What about dose? Can you talk about different doses? Where do you start with somebody?
I tried to find something really great to share with everybody on that. And the best thing that I can find is that there are so many different plants being grown, and such a different way of getting it into a particular form for the supplement. So, there's the liquid or gummies, or there's capsules. That it can vary so much. And I think even over time, depending on the source of a particular company, you might have to actually change your dosing. So I just like to start low, see how people do with that, and then increase as they need to. I also wanted to make sure I gave accurate information for this on the side effect profile. There are very, very few side effects, and that data also be in the review article that we'll post in the notes. There's very little that can actually be on the downside. So, some people feel a little bit more tired. I think because of the gut regulation, they might get a little bit of diarrhea, and they might have a little bit more or less appetite or weight. So I could not find much other than if somebody's on medications, you might need to monitor them because it can, there can be interactions with how drugs are metabolized. So, even like the average supplement, if you look at fish oil and magnesium, we see side effects from those all the time, are just foods.
Right.
So I think it's pretty benign as far as the potential for side effects. But one of the things I really wanted to emphasize is to make sure that you get a good quality CBD.
So let's talk about that. How do we know?
This is so important because especially as we're helping people to get well, we do not want it to be adding to their toxicity. So this is such a cool fact. So part of what happened after Chernobyl, the soil was so full of heavy metals that they needed to figure out how they could grow healthy food again. So they planted cannabis and then studied what happened to the soil and what happened to the plant. And cannabis picks up the toxins in the soil. So it's part of what happens around the world for remediating the environment after all kinds of pollutants happen. So it will pick up heavy metals, it will pick up pesticides and other environmental toxins. So then if you're ingesting the plant, then you can be getting all of those toxins along with it. So it's really important to check the quality of the products that you're recommending, and they're you just have to be in contact with the particular companies. And the other thing that is really a big problem with the cannabis and other products as well is mycotoxins. So
Ah,
yeah, this is fascinating. So mold, and some of the molds that make mycotoxins that are, carcinogens, damage the kidneys, liver, all of those things are part of the plant's normal microbiome. And so then if they're not dried and processed very quickly, if there's any moisture, if they sit around, that mold is going to have a party and make
right.
mycotoxins. So again, you can be giving toxins that are going to make the patient worse rather than better. So just really understanding the company or companies that you're recommending, and how they're monitoring that quality and how they're passing that on to you is critical.
So, what are the questions we need to ask manufacturers? Do we have to ask for heavy metals,
Yeah,
different pesticides?
I mean, I love to ask for as many things as they are, and different companies will check and assure different things, but definitely arsenic, cadmium, glyphosate, mercury, pesticides. Make sure it really is the right amount of THC. So prove that it's less than the 0.3%. Otherwise, people might fail drug tests and that kind of thing that they're doing to get jobs. And then look at the mold and bacteria, and then anything else that they're willing to check, the more the better.
Okay, good. And you had mentioned magnesium and fish oil previously. How do you use CBD in conjunction with other anti-inflammatories or other things that might be needed for pain?
Yeah, so I end up being the doctor of last resort for a lot of people. So pain is often a very big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're working at what's the root cause, I go ahead and use other natural anti-inflammatories along with the CBD. So and turmeric is one that I love, but it has a lot of the same types of problems that CBD can. So again, making sure that it's really ultra pure. I think the number at one point was 80% of the turmeric supplements out there and turmeric products out there you wouldn't want to be ingesting it if you knew what was in it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I love resveratrol, uh, um, and fish oil, and so depending on what is going on with the patient, how much inflammation they have, how quickly we can get to the root cause, and then of course using as much food. I know you and I love
Yeah, definitely.
how much of a difference food can make. But yeah, lots of those plant um, colorful foods like you have on your rainbow, and 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 then one of the other big things, oh my gosh, is resetting the limbic system. That is one
Huh.
of the best things that can bring down the inflammation in the body. So the limbic system is the part of the brain that's truly the run from the tiger. I got stuck in this a few years ago when I was I had developed adult onset asthma for the first time in my life. And most buildings that got so sensitive, most buildings I went into in Texas caused the asthma to flare up. And I really got stuck in that limbic loop. So I used a device called the Muse, which I think probably a lot of people are familiar with, to really reset it. But one of the things that I found when I was just reviewing for this talk was that CBD is one of the things that can help reset the limbic loop. So that nailed it for me. I'm such a fan now. So when we get out of that survival state, then our bodies can regulate that inflammation and really help to reset pain significantly.
So you must be taking CBD. It's almost like when you talk about all these effects, how can anybody not want to take this?
You know, I actually don't, but after after reviewing it and seeing my patients, I think I'm probably really lucky in that I have a very healthy and internal endocannabinoid system, because I'm feeling happy most days, and rarely have pain unless I gotten into mold again or something. So, but it is kind of it is in the conversation in my head, like, well, maybe I should take it at least a few times a week just to give that extra boost to my system. How about you? Do you take it?
I don't. Again, I'm such a newbie to all of this. And like you, I feel like, well, if I'm not in pain, I have my dad on it for tremors. So he has
Oh,
just primary tremor. And so he takes it and he does his handwriting every day. And he has started to see somewhat of an improvement. But yeah, I'm curious about it in general. It
yeah, very.
seems like it's, why not even just try it if it can modulate mood and maybe amp up certain aspects. I'm
Mhm.
kind of curious too, you talked about food and you and I really aligned to, making sure that we've got food first. What about getting endocannabinoids from food sources? So if we're using hemp seed oil, would we be getting some amount of CBD?
That's a really good question. I don't get the sense that there's a high amount of CBD in it, but that's a very good question. I'll have to research that. I don't think it's very much because I think the products that we're getting on the market are more concentrated for the cannabinol. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to be, but I'm just thinking this is a class of phytonutrients, right? It's got to be in multiple plant compounds. So if we're eating a plant-based diet, we probably are getting some influx of phytocannabinoids, and it's just a matter of degree and, again, how concentrated those things are and if they degrade with cooking or, how that is being altered.
Oh my gosh, I'll have to look for some studies on that. I think maybe that's why our endocannabinoid systems are doing pretty well, is because we eat so many plants.
And we know there's a food and mood connection, right? People that eat more fruits and vegetables tend to be happier people. There are studies, large studies showing that now. So it's hard to say. We don't know if it's the flavonoids, which are benzodiazepine agonists, or, all these different compounds in plants. I think it's very complex.
Yeah. I just get a sense that everything just runs better when we have that food. Like all the little chemical messengers are so much,
Absolutely.
doing such a better job when they have that excess of
Absolutely.
the phytonutrients to help them.
So, Anne, let's talk just in our remaining minutes here about sleep. So, we talked a little bit about mood. Talk about the number of people that you see with sleep disturbances. I feel like, sleep is the medicine of the 21st century. It's like there's more and more visibility into the effects of sleep. You see it with people with pain and other types of mood disturbance, hormonal disturbances. Talk about your protocol for how you might work, just kind of generically, or just some guidelines with people with sleep disturbance and light, the role of light and circadian rhythm.
So, yeah, I think about sleep as being a really good thermometer for something starting to go awry. If your sleep is off, there's something really out of balance in your body. And so, while we're working on the band aids to help you getting sleep so your body can heal better, it's still so important to get to the root cause. Like, why is that system getting so disrupted? So, oh my gosh, light is often, if people will just truly get their bedroom like a cave, they'll start sleeping. It's so fascinating. That one thing alone, even if they have to put up garbage, black garbage bags over
Love
windows,
it.
and put a towel under the door so the moonlight isn't shining in underneath the door. Duct tape all the little LEDs or turn things off, like the smoke detector light.
It's amazing how a smoke detector light can really change, like that small light can really filter. We don't recognize and realize how important those small bits of light can change us.
It's so important. Yeah, so the red blood cells actually change conformation with the light hitting any place on your skin. It's not just your eyes. And will start to tell the brain, oh, you can start decreasing melatonin production and increase the cortisol. So it just changes that whole crossover set point with sleep. So it's been so fun over the years how many people like to say, okay, make sure you get a flashlight and put it on your nightstand. So if you have to get up in the night, you don't have to turn all the lights on and you don't fall and break something. But it needs to be that dark that you really can't see your hand in front of your face. And then, of course, all the other good sleep hygiene things, the blue light blocking glasses, that would be
Yeah.
the next thing to layer on and get off the electronics as early as you can. It's great if it could be a couple hours before bedtime. And then don't eat close to bedtime. Don't drink too much water too close to bedtime. Just those maintenance kind of things can really make a big difference. And then simple things like magnesium glycinate. I think I would say 90% of my patients are on magnesium glycinate. And because of my patient population, I get to run a lot of tests on a lot of patients. That's part of what I love to do is put the data with the action plan and then test the hypotheses and make sure that we're getting to the right things. But I would say, yeah, at least 90%, maybe 95% of people are magnesium deficient inside the red blood cells. So, so by the time you get the darkness, the blue light blocking, not eating close to dinner, and then take a little bit of magnesium, often it's solved. And then if not, the next thing to think about is the CBD.
It's amazing how many things are just simple shifts that we can make, and that could create a ripple effect and really change our lives. And so just even mentioning, like what you said, keeping the bedroom dark, taking magnesium. I mean, these are not expensive. Some of these things don't cost anything. And then CBD, I think one of the things I've heard about CBD, though, as it relates to cost is that, it's so expensive. And, is it more expensive relative to what people can do otherwise for pain? I mean, if we put it in perspective, how does it stack up? Because there's quite a range of prices out there for CBD oil. And so people are concerned about that.
I think you really have to think about what the mechanism of action is. So a lot of the things that people are doing for pain, like taking an aspirin, an Advil, Tylenol, those are things that are actually potentially doing some significant harm.
Right.
Whereas when you look at the CBD, it's really supporting the body's healing. So when you look at the value, yeah, you could go pop a Tylenol, but to assist your system in the healing process, what's that worth to you?
Yeah. That's a really good way to look at it, right? It's like looking at benefit versus risk, what you're getting. And I think what I'm taking away from this discussion, here are my takeaways is it almost feels like, just to try it, just to see how it might change. Sometimes we don't know how bad we feel until we start feeling good. We may not know about how much better our sleep can get until it is actually better. We may not know how much better our mood can get until we actually feel better. And so trying, just like you said, these are immediate effects of CBD. So why not just try it with something that is safe, quality tested? Now, one of the things that you mentioned as follow-up is that you have a number of different reviews, blogs, and even you mentioned something about regulations and looking at the different states. Will you have something on that as well?
Yes, I'll put in this lovely review article about the neurological benefits of phytocannabinoids. I can't even say it. It's
a long word.
One of the best articles that I've seen on the topic because it covers so much of the physiology and then addresses the safety and then, links to the studies that have been done. So if you have an interest in Parkinson's or tremor or seizures, it's such a great resource. So I'll do that. And then got another sheet that's on the overview of the pharmacological effects and then a link for by state. I don't know how accurate it is, so you still may need to double check the data, but it was a really great list of by state where it's legal, where it's not, and any caveats around it, anything that you need to be careful for, because there still is so much confusion out there. It's getting better, but a lot of people still don't know the distinction between the THC and the CBD.
Yeah. This has been so helpful for helping me just to understand the basics of it and how you've walked us through looking at quality, defining the term, looking again at that 0.3% THC or less in hemp oil. So it's not just cannabis, it is hemp, right? This is a plant-based oil. It just happens to occur in cannabis, but it's not like we have to see this as something that's psychoactive. It is something that's pain modulating, it's gut modulating, it's mood modulating. And my takeaway is I'm going to give it a go. I'm actually going to order some and to try it out, even for myself. I mean, I have my dad on it, but I myself have never tried it, and therefore I haven't recommended it to anybody else. Right?
Okay, so
I might feel more comfortable, and then doing the reading the review. That'll be helpful. So thank you, Dr. Shippy.
Let's check back in a week or two and compare notes.
Yeah. And again, we may think that we feel good and, we're asymptomatic, but perhaps there could be some tweaks and some improvement here of looking into these types of psychoactive substances, and they're all within food. We just happen to illuminate this particular class, but food is loaded with different mood modulating substances. And so this is a great example of one that we need to shine a light on to help people with pain.
So I love how researched it's getting, so that they're like, you can be confident that if you get a good quality CBD, that it can be very beneficial for many different areas, including, we didn't get to it, but there is some tumor assistance that's probably more from the CBD than the THC. So it may actually even help with that aspect of their immune system to fight cancer. So there's a lot of research coming out on that as well. Interesting.
It's hitting on multiple cylinders here. Yeah. Okay. Well, again, I appreciate your wisdom, and again, you having the engineering mind coupled with the functional medicine mind, being an internist. I feel like that's such a great duo, and so putting that in perspective, giving us the landscape, the context for this agent. And so thank you so much for sharing it with us. This has been so good, and we haven't had any guest on the show thus far who has really gone so deep into CBD and explaining it. So thank you so much. And if anybody has questions after this live broadcast, I would encourage you to put them on the thread, and we will post the links to this review article that Dr. Shippy is referring to so that you can review it and answer further questions that you might have later. Yeah. So super. Thank you so much, Anne. It's been great talking with you, and thanks everybody for joining us. Take care.